So it's always good to start out an event with a little bit of news from our state's chief executive officer. So not a bad way to start. Imagine what we got in store for you for the rest of the day. So Governor Whitmer, thank you so much for using our venue to sign this very important executive order. We look forward to working with you and supporting you as you work to make sure that Michigan is indeed that global leadership. So we are here together for exactly the same purpose that Governor Whitmer signed those executive orders, to ensure Michigan's ongoing leadership role in the next generation of mobility. Now, as everyone in this room knows, just because Michigan owned the last century does not in any way guarantee that we will own the next century of mobility. We are going to have to work for it. We're going to have to earn it every day. But there is no doubt, if you needed to place a bet on any point in the globe as to who will own that next generation of mobility, you would put that bet right here on Detroit and Michigan. We lead the nation in the number of engineers, in the engineers that matter when it comes to the mobility future. We have 21 OEMs with significant presences right here in the state of Michigan, far more than any other place on the planet. And in addition to that, 96 of the top 100 suppliers are located right here in Michigan. The concentration of talent and companies and technology is greater no other place than it is right here in Michigan. And thanks to our research team and MICHauto, we have documented for the first time the actual automotive industry's contribution to the Michigan economy. And that is an impressive $225 billion annually. We have a lot of assets in our favor. Now, obviously, it's not just the companies that we have that make us a great bet for the next century. We have world-class next-generation mobility testing facilities like M-City, the Center for American Mobility, Kettering University's GM Research Center. And thanks to the state of Michigan, we have a dedicated unit in Planet M that is focusing state resources on next-generation mobility. And we have miles and miles and miles of wired roadways for testing here in Southeast Michigan. And we have exciting things happening right here in Detroit. We have Ford's investment in the Michigan Central train station. We have the University of Michigan's plan for a Detroit Center for Innovation. We have the Michigan Mobility Lab and a new mobility-focused WeWork coming online right here in the city. And that's in addition to all the other great things that are currently happening, like the Planet M landing zone, like the Argo AI and May Mobility autonomous vehicles that are being tested right in front of our very eyes right here in downtown Detroit. So we may be leading, but others are not standing still, not by any stretch of the imagination. Look around the globe, just a handful of examples. K-City in Seoul, South Korea, a 90-acre mobility testing site. In Sweden, AstraZero, another full-scale test facility that has been completed. Closer to home, right here in the United States, in California, Go Momentum, 2,100 acres of testing facility. Drive Ohio, which is just down the road here, 35 miles of real-world testing facility. These are just a handful of examples of what other parts of the globe are doing to compete for the mantle that we own today and we will own tomorrow. And 100 years ago, when this industry was just being started, literally right down the street at the Pontchartrain Hotel bar, this industry was born of innovation and grit. And the next generation will be driven by that same ethos. But we need to do more. In this next century, we're going to have to build a more diverse and inclusive environment, both in our workplaces and across our communities here in Michigan. We're going to have to ensure we're leveraging all of our assets. The automotive and mobility community cannot exist in a vacuum. We have great assets, like our defense industry, which is quite prominent here in Michigan, but we don't partner enough with them and we don't celebrate them enough, and they need to be brought further and further into this automotive and mobility loop that we're creating for this next century. We need to develop a more robust entrepreneurial startup ecosystem. Yes, we have all the big companies. Yes, we have all this talent, but we need the infusion of disruptive, young technology and young, talented people to make sure that all of our companies are succeeding in this new dynamic mobility century. We need to continue to ensure that we do things just like what Governor Whitmer did right now, which is ensure that our governments, both at the state level and our local level, are always thinking way into the future. Like, what do we need to do today to ensure that our mobility companies, our mobility technology say, yes, Michigan is the place I want to be to test, to deploy, to manufacture? Are we being that state? Are we that beacon? Are we the most welcoming place on the planet for that kind of technology development? We need to ensure that all parts of our society embrace a culture of change and embrace a culture of trying new things. You know, this first century of the automobile was, as we all know, the Michigan century. We changed the world. We put this world on wheels. And that culture that we developed, it's a culture of horsepower. It's a culture of sheet metal. It's a culture of engine revs. And it's something that we all have in our blood. It's something that we share. It's something we're passionate about. And it's something we must never, ever forget. We must celebrate our history, because if we lose our history, we won't be able to create our future. But there's a caveat. We have to understand that the future is going to be very different than what came before. And those of us who grew up on a certain vision of what the automobile is, we're going to have to keep that history and celebrate that history at the same time embracing this bold new future. We're going to have to find, no pun intended, a new gear. For some of us, the culture we need to change is our own. For much of the global competition vying for this mantle of the next century of mobility, they are starting from a clean sheet. While they don't have the rich history that we have in Michigan of creating the automobile, creating the automotive culture, they don't have that rich history, but at the same time, they don't have any preconceived notions. And when you think about what disruptive technology is setting old assumptions, the old status quo aside, and creating something completely different. So we're going to have to do two very difficult things at the same time as Michiganders and people who love and support the automotive/mobility industry. We're going to have to celebrate this history while creating something new. And our leading companies are pushing into this bold new future. All of us as Michiganders need to do the same, because if our companies do all the right things, if our governments do all the right things, but we as Michiganders aren't willing to embrace that new technology, if we aren't excited, if we aren't as excited about the next generation of AV or electrification that is being tested on our streets as we are about, say, the new Corvette or a Ford Mustang GT500. If we're not equally excited about the new thing as we are about what was and what is, the future might get developed someplace else. So that's our lesson for today. Thank you so much for being here. You're going to have a great day. We're honored that you're here. Enjoy it. Take care.